Eleanor Roosevelt's life is a story of resilience, controversy, and transformation. Behind the public persona of a groundbreaking First Lady lies a complex woman shaped by tragedy, scandal, and an unyielding drive for justice. From her turbulent childhood to her bold defiance of societal norms, Eleanor's journey redefined what it meant to be a political figure in America. In today's video, we'll uncover the untold story of Eleanor Roosevelt, diving into her deepest struggles, her controversial relationships, and her legacy as one of history's most inspiring figures. Born on October 11, 1884, to wealthy socialites Anna Hall and Elliot Roosevelt, Eleanor's early life placed her at the heart of New York's elite society. Outwardly, she epitomized privilege, but her childhood was far from idyllic. From an early age, Eleanor faced a profound lack of warmth and acceptance from her own mother, who resented her for her perceived plainness. This rejection from the person she most needed unconditional love from cast a shadow over her formative years. At just 2 years old, Eleanor Roosevelt faced a traumatic experience that would shadow her for the rest of her life. On May 19, 1887, while traveling with her family aboard the SS Britannic, disaster struck. The ship collided with the SS Celtic, creating chaos as passengers scrambled for safety. Amid the turmoil, little Eleanor and her family were evacuated onto lifeboats, narrowly escaping the danger. Their safe return to New York was a relief, but the event left an indelible mark on young Eleanor. News of the accident quickly spread, capturing headlines in the public's imagination. The incident underscored the dangers of maritime travel at the time, and as the story reached New York society, sympathy poured in for the Roosevelt family. However, for Eleanor, the fear seeded during that terrifying escape grew into a lasting phobia of ships and the sea, a deeply personal reminder of how close her family had come to tragedy. Over the years, Eleanor rarely spoke about the incident publicly, but those close to her noted her unease whenever faced with sea travel. For someone who later became such a commanding and public figure, this vulnerability added a layer of relatability to her image. Fans and followers admired her even more for her ability to confront fears, a trait she demonstrated time and again in her adult life as she navigated personal and political challenges. This formative experience may have left scars, but it also set the stage for Eleanor's extraordinary resilience and determination to rise above her fears. In 1892, Eleanor Roosevelt endured her first profound loss when her mother succumbed to diphtheria. This tragedy marked the initial fracture in her family's stability, and the situation rapidly worsened. Just a year later, Eleanor's younger brother, Elliot Jr., fell victim to the same illness, and he too did not survive. With her mother and brother gone, Eleanor turned to her father for guidance, only to witness his downward spiral. Elliot Roosevelt, plagued by alcoholism, was eventually confined to a sanitarium. During a fit of withdrawal-induced delirium, he leapt from a window. Though he survived the fall, he succumbed shortly afterward to a fatal seizure. Before his death, however, Elliot entrusted Eleanor with a final, solemn request: to look after her younger brother, Hall. Eleanor embraced this responsibility wholeheartedly, supporting Hall throughout her life. Yet at only 14 years old, Eleanor was left to face her growing pains in the shadow of immense personal loss. These early tragedies became both a heavy burden and a source of her resilience, shaping her character in profound ways. Following her father's death, Eleanor was placed under the care of her grandmother, but her struggles with self-worth persisted. She continued to see herself as an ugly duckling, yet her intellect and curiosity began to shine. Even as a teenager, Eleanor displayed remarkable wisdom, penning at the age of 14. No matter how plain a woman may be, if truth and loyalty are stamped upon her face, all will be attracted to her. Her confidence slowly blossomed during her time at Allenswood Academy, a private finishing school in England. There, Eleanor began to shed her insecurities and captured the affection of her peers. One of her cousins, Karen, who also attended the school, described Eleanor as the center of attention, beloved by everyone. Despite her newfound confidence, Eleanor approached her societal debut with apprehension. Little did she know, this event would not only close the chapter on her turbulent childhood, but also set the stage for a romantic journey that would alter the course of history. In 1902, Eleanor Roosevelt made her societal debut, a significant moment for any young woman of her standing. But amidst the glitz and glamour of New York's elite, something far more personal was unfolding. That same year, she met Franklin Delano Roosevelt, her future husband. The twist? Franklin wasn't a stranger. He was her fifth cousin. Their paths crossed during a train ride, and what began as a chance encounter quickly turned into a secret romance. Imagine the thrill and the challenges of keeping their blossoming love hidden, especially under the watchful eye of Franklin's formidable mother, Sarah Delano Roosevelt. When Sarah discovered their affection the following year, she was livid. Known for her steely demeanor and iron grip over her son's life, Sarah went to great lengths to end the relationship. She argued that Eleanor lacked the sophistication and social standing befitting a Roosevelt bride. Ironic, given Eleanor's aristocratic background. But Franklin and Eleanor, young and determined, stood firm against her opposition. Their defiance was a bold move for the era, but it was only a preview of the resilience that would come to define Eleanor's life. Their wedding in 1905 was nothing short of a grand spectacle. Eleanor's uncle, none other than President Theodore Roosevelt, walked her down the aisle, filling the role of her late father. Theodore's enthusiasm for the union was unmistakable. His famous quip, "It's a good thing to keep the name in the family," was splashed across newspapers. The event was celebrated with all the pomp and splendor one would expect of a Roosevelt affair, even making the front page of the New York Times. To the outside world, it seemed like a perfect union, but appearances can be deceiving. While Eleanor wore the role of the blushing bride, she soon found herself entangled in a new struggle, navigating life under Sarah's shadow. Sarah wasted no time asserting control, even gifting the couple a townhouse in New York, conveniently connected to her own. This proximity allowed Sarah to maintain her influence over every aspect of their lives, from household decisions to how Eleanor raised her children. Franklin's deference to his mother often left Eleanor feeling isolated and powerless, a stark contrast to the public image of harmony and privilege. The couple went on to have 6 children, but Eleanor never truly felt like their mother. Once the babies arrived, Sarah took complete control, dictating how they were raised. Eleanor's eldest son, James, later recalled how his grandmother once told him, "Your mother only bore you. I am more your mother than she is." This dynamic left Eleanor feeling deeply alienated. Compounding her unhappiness was her aversion to sexual intimacy, a fact she once confided to her daughter Anna, describing it as an ordeal. These challenges, combined with the emotional toll of her marriage, created a sense of despair that seemed only to deepen over time. Eleanor's perseverance earned admiration. Fans of the Roosevelt family were fascinated by the young bride who, despite being overshadowed, began carving out her own path. Society columns praised her grace and dignity in the face of Sarah's dominance, while whispers of sympathy circulated among those who understood her plight. Eleanor's quiet strength resonated with women of the time, many of whom found themselves similarly subjugated by societal expectations or family pressures. Even the press took notice of the underlying tension in Eleanor's new life. While glowing accounts of the wedding persisted, more critical voices emerged, subtly questioning how a strong personality like Sarah might clash with Eleanor's independent spirit. Over time, these dynamics became a recurring narrative in the media, adding layers to Eleanor's already complex public persona. Looking back, this chapter of Eleanor's life sets the stage for her transformation. Her ability to endure, adapt, and eventually rise above these early struggles laid the foundation for her future as a trailblazing First Lady. The romance with Franklin may have begun as a storybook love affair, but it quickly turned into a test of her resilience, a theme that would define her legacy in the years to come. In 1921, while vacationing with Franklin in New Brunswick, disaster struck. Franklin fell gravely ill, and the diagnosis was devastating: a paralytic illness believed at the time to be polio. Despite Eleanor's dedicated nursing, Franklin's legs were permanently paralyzed, and his disability brought immense challenges. While his mother Sarah wanted him to leave politics and retire, Eleanor fiercely encouraged him to stay in public life. This conflict marked a pivotal moment in Eleanor's personal journey. For the first time, she asserted herself against her formidable mother-in-law, gaining a sense of independence she had long been denied. Eleanor's strength during this period became a defining feature of her role, both as a wife and a public figure. Stepping out of the shadows, she began representing Franklin in public, making numerous appearances on his behalf and steadily growing into an influential force. The 1930s brought profound changes to Eleanor's life, not just politically, but personally as well. While she remained devoted to her husband and his burgeoning presidential career, their marriage lacked passion, prompting her to seek emotional intimacy elsewhere. Enter Lorena Hickok, a journalist for the Associated Press, who covered Franklin's campaign and quickly became infatuated with Eleanor. Their relationship blossomed into an intense connection, with Lorena writing Eleanor-long, heartfelt letters filled with affection. Eleanor's responses mirrored Lorena's passion, with some of the letters expressing feelings that could easily be described as scandalous for the time. On the day of Franklin's 1933 inauguration, Eleanor wore a sapphire ring gifted to her by Lorena, a subtle symbol of their bond during one of the most significant days of her life. However, given her new role as First Lady, such a secret, if exposed, could have unleashed a public scandal of catastrophic proportions. Eleanor was not without enemies, and one of her most formidable adversaries was FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. Hoover despised Eleanor for her outspoken liberalism and her critiques of his surveillance tactics. He kept a voluminous file on her, amassing 3,000 pages of documentation over the years. Rumors suggest he may have uncovered evidence of her relationship with Lorena and possibly intended to use it for blackmail. Yet the bond with Lorena was not Eleanor's only clandestine relationship. Behind closed doors, she was also rumored to have pursued another affair, this time with a man. After meeting in 1929, Eleanor Roosevelt formed a close friendship with her bodyguard, Earl Miller. Their bond grew so strong that they corresponded daily. However, if it seems Eleanor was the only one straying from her marriage, think again. Franklin Roosevelt had his own rumored affair with his secretary, Marguerite Missy LeHand. With infidelity on both sides, one might assume their relationship was doomed, but that wasn't the case. Despite their unconventional marriage, they deeply cared for one another and acknowledged they couldn't meet each other's needs romantically. Instead, they embraced a partnership that allowed them to thrive in their own ways. Franklin's unwavering support was a cornerstone of Eleanor Roosevelt's remarkable transformation. But her determination to redefine the role of First Lady made her a trailblazer in her own right. From the moment she stepped into the White House, Eleanor refused to settle for the traditional image of a housewife in power. Instead, she set out to reshape the expectations of her position, breaking barriers and challenging societal norms in ways that sparked both admiration and controversy. One of Eleanor's most groundbreaking moments came in 1940, when she became the First Lady to deliver a speech at a National Party convention. Standing before a sea of delegates, she championed unity and progress in the face of global turmoil. Her speech, bold and unprecedented, sent shock waves through the political world. Media outlets were abuzz with headlines like "Eleanor Roosevelt shatters First Lady traditions," while supporters hailed her as a courageous voice of change. Critics, however, decried her actions as unbecoming of a First Lady, labeling her too political and overstepping her bounds. Despite the backlash, Eleanor remained undeterred. She continued to dismantle the restrictive boundaries that had constrained her predecessors. Through her widely read syndicated newspaper column, My Day, she connected with millions of Americans on a deeply personal level. The column wasn't just about politics. It featured her views on current events, reflections on daily life, and advocacy for social justice. Fans eagerly awaited each installment, praising her candid and empathetic voice. Some even referred to her as America's First Lady of the People. Eleanor didn't stop at the written word. She took to the airwaves with her weekly radio program, which further solidified her role as a communicator and advocate. At a time when female voices were seldom heard in the media, Eleanor's broadcasts became a beacon for progressive ideas. Supporters flooded the White House with letters of gratitude, often sharing how her words inspired them to action or gave them hope during difficult times. Another attraction of Eleanor was her financial independence. Determined to prove that a First Lady could be more than an extension of her husband, she earned an impressive $75,000 during her first year in the role, an amount comparable to Franklin's presidential salary. Remarkably, she donated most of it to charity, a move that solidified her reputation as a compassionate and selfless leader. The media marveled at her ability to balance personal success with public service, with one outlet dubbing her the First Lady of Empowerment. Eleanor's boldness wasn't without its detractors. Conservative commentators and political rivals accused her of being too ambitious or meddling in affairs beyond her expertise. Yet, for every critic, there were countless fans who rallied behind her vision for a more inclusive and equitable society. Public gatherings where she spoke drew massive crowds, with people often traveling great distances just to catch a glimpse of the First Lady who was rewriting history. By refusing to fade into the background, Eleanor Roosevelt paved the way for future First Ladies to embrace activism and advocacy. Her legacy as a trailblazer continues to inspire, reminding us all that breaking the mold often comes with challenges, but the rewards of progress are worth every step. What truly set Eleanor apart, however, was her fearless advocacy. She wasn't afraid to use her platform to speak out on divisive issues. A staunch supporter of the civil rights movement, she famously broke protocol by inviting hundreds of Black Americans to the White House, challenging long-standing traditions. She was also among the few in the administration who championed equal benefits for all races. Her unwavering opinions often put her at odds with her husband's political positions, but Eleanor was never one to back down. She thrived on challenging the status quo, even if it meant rocking the boat. In 1939, the Daughters of the American Revolution, DR, caused a national uproar when they barred Black opera singer Marian Anderson from performing at Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C. Outraged, Eleanor Roosevelt protested by resigning from the organization altogether. But she didn't stop there. Refusing to let such discrimination prevail, she helped organize an alternative concert for Anderson at the Lincoln Memorial, allowing her to perform freely in front of a massive, supportive audience. By standing so firmly with the black community, Eleanor earned the ire of many Southern white citizens. This criticism reached a boiling point in June 1943 when racial tensions exploded into riots in Detroit. Her detractors blamed her directly, accusing her of fueling unrest. However, even as her critics attacked her, her popularity soared within the black community. Eleanor's advocacy turned many black voters, traditionally aligned with the Republican Party, into staunch Democrats. Eleanor's ability to walk such a dangerous political tightrope became even more critical as the nation faced one of its darkest days. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, dragging the United States into World War II. The fallout was swift and severe, particularly for Japanese Americans who were suddenly viewed with intense suspicion. Eleanor was appalled by the growing prejudice against them. In a bold and forward-thinking stance, she spoke out against this discrimination, even as her husband, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, signed an executive order forcing thousands of Japanese Americans into internment camps, a decision she despised. Her outspoken defense of the Japanese population drew widespread criticism, with some, including the Los Angeles Times, calling for her to retire from public life. But Eleanor refused to be silenced. As the war escalated, Eleanor shifted her focus to the plight of war refugees. She passionately urged FDR to allow more immigrants, particularly those fleeing Nazi persecution, to enter the United States. Yet in this matter, Franklin let her down. Instead of opening the nation's doors, he imposed stricter immigration policies. Years later, Eleanor's son James revealed that her greatest regret was her inability to convince her husband to accept more refugees escaping Hitler's regime. This internal struggle weighed heavily on Eleanor, but her challenges were far from over. On April 12, 1945, tragedy struck. President Roosevelt died suddenly of a cerebral hemorrhage while in Warm Springs, Georgia. His death sent shockwaves through the nation, with many viewing him as a casualty of war, given the immense pressures he endured as a leader. For Eleanor, however, the grief was compounded by a painful reminder of the past. With Franklin's passing, an old wound resurfaced. His affair with Lucy Mercer, his former social secretary. Lucy's significance in Franklin's life would now cast a shadow over Eleanor's memories, adding another layer of complexity to her personal and public legacy. However, in September 1918, Eleanor Roosevelt stumbled upon a discovery that would forever alter her marriage. While unpacking one of her husband's suitcases, she found a bundle of letters. Driven by curiosity, she opened them, only to uncover love letters from Franklin D. Roosevelt to Lucy Mercer. The relationship between Franklin and Lucy was so passionate that Franklin had even contemplated leaving Eleanor to be with his mistress. However, political realities and family pressures stood in the way. His advisors and his formidable mother, Sarah Roosevelt, forbade him from seeking a divorce, warning that it would ruin his career. As a result, Franklin and Eleanor remained married, though their relationship was irreparably strained. This personal turmoil revealed complexities within Eleanor's character. While she would later become an outspoken advocate for civil rights and social justice, her past included views she herself would come to renounce. In 1918, Eleanor harbored biases against wealthy Jewish people. She once referred to a gathering as a Jew party and expressed discomfort about enrolling too many Jewish students at the Todd Hunter School, which she co-owned, stating that they were very unlike ourselves. These views, though reflective of societal prejudices at the time, are undeniably troubling. After Franklin's death in 1945, Eleanor Roosevelt faced a crossroads. Many expected her to retreat from public life, but instead she stepped into one of the most impactful roles of her career. Appointed as a delegate to the United Nations, Eleanor quickly became a driving force in shaping the organization's mission for global peace and equality. In 1946, she was elected chair of the United Nations Human Rights Commission, where her leadership and tenacity shone brightest. Eleanor spearheaded the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document that would go on to serve as the foundation for human rights protections worldwide. Her work was tireless, navigating complex international negotiations while staying true to her vision of dignity and equality for all. At times she faced pushback, with critics questioning whether a woman, especially one from the United States, could lead such a monumental effort. Yet Eleanor's moral clarity and unwavering commitment silenced doubters. When the Universal Declaration was adopted on December 10, 1948, it marked a historic achievement. Headlines around the world celebrated her triumph, with newspapers calling her the architect of global rights and dubbing her First Lady of the World. The public's reaction was overwhelming. Letters poured in, praising her leadership and thanking her for standing up for the voiceless. For millions, Eleanor was more than a political figure. She was a symbol of hope and progress in a fractured world. Her role in crafting the Universal Declaration cemented her legacy not just as a transformative First Lady, but as one of the most influential figures in the fight for human rights. Eleanor Roosevelt had proven once again that her influence extended far beyond the White House, leaving an indelible mark on the world stage. However, in August 1946, Eleanor Roosevelt faced a serious car accident while driving near the New York City-Westchester County line. Her car crossed the center line, resulting in a collision that injured 4 people and left her with significant injuries, including the loss of 2 front teeth. Although witnesses speculated she might have dozed off, Eleanor attributed the incident to being momentarily blinded by the late afternoon sun. This event, though rarely discussed, further exemplifies the physical and personal challenges she faced even in her later years as she continued to push forward in her public life. Yet Eleanor's journey was one of growth and transformation. As she aged and gained wisdom, her attitudes evolved. By the time of World War II and beyond, she had shed her earlier biases, becoming an ally to Jewish communities and a staunch opponent of anti-Semitism. Her ability to confront and change her views exemplifies her capacity for introspection and moral courage. In her later years, Eleanor Roosevelt faced a decline in health that mirrored the intensity and resilience she had shown throughout her life. By 1960, the physical toll of her tireless advocacy and decades of public service began to show. That year, while walking in New York City, Eleanor was struck by a car, a moment that would mark the beginning of her final chapter. Though she initially seemed to recover, the accident unveiled deeper health issues lurking beneath the surface. Doctors diagnosed Eleanor with aplastic anemia, a rare and life-threatening condition that affects the body's ability to produce blood cells. For someone who had spent her life in constant motion, this diagnosis was devastating. Yet true to her nature, Eleanor did not let her illness completely stop her. Even as her strength waned, she continued to speak out on issues she held dear, refusing to let her voice fade quietly into the background. By 1962, her condition had worsened. Dormant tuberculosis, likely contracted during her younger years, reemerged in her bone marrow, a cruel twist of fate for someone who had already endured so much. Despite the best efforts of her doctors, including experimental treatments, Eleanor's health continued to decline. On November 7, 1962, she passed away from cardiac failure at the age of 78. Her death sent ripples of grief across the nation and the world. News outlets from every corner of the globe mourned the loss of a woman who had reshaped what it meant to be a public figure. Headlines read, "The First Lady of the World passes away, a testament to her unparalleled influence." Vigils were held in cities across America, and letters of condolence poured in from world leaders, activists, and ordinary citizens alike. In New York, crowds gathered outside the Roosevelt family home, leaving flowers, notes, and tokens of remembrance. Many spoke of how Eleanor's words and actions had inspired them to fight for justice or overcome personal struggles. For millions, she was not just a public figure, but a deeply personal symbol of hope and resilience. At her funeral, the diversity of mourners underscored the breadth of her impact. Civil rights leaders stood shoulder to shoulder with political figures, while members of the press, educators, and everyday citizens filled the pews. Her passing was not only a loss for her family, but for an entire generation who had looked to her for guidance and courage during turbulent times. Eleanor's legacy, however, did not end with her death. Her tireless advocacy for human rights, equality, and social progress continued to resonate. Schools, foundations, and awards were named in her honor, and her life became a beacon for future generations of activists. Today, her story serves as a reminder that even in the face of adversity, one person can ignite profound change. As we reflect on Eleanor Roosevelt's extraordinary life, it's clear that her death was not an end, but a transition. She left behind a world that was more compassionate, more just, and more inspired because of her unwavering determination to make it so. In the words of one mourner, Eleanor didn't just belong to her time, she belongs to all time. Eleanor Roosevelt's life was as multifaceted as it was influential. Her personal challenges and fearless advocacy made her a trailblazer, challenging conventions and paving the way for future generations. Despite the controversies and heartbreak she faced, Eleanor's unwavering commitment to justice and equality cemented her legacy as a transformative figure in American history. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the untold story of Eleanor Roosevelt. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible historical tales. See you in the next video.